The last thing Callum Trent expected on a rainy Tuesday morning was to fall headfirst into the kind of moment that changes your whole life. But there she was, crying into her designer coat at the corner table of a grimy coffee shop. Callum shifted his sleeping daughter, Violet, a little higher in his arms as he placed their worn stroller beside the wall. The place smelled like burnt espresso and old wood. A far cry from fancy, but it was warm, and that was enough for him. He glanced back at the woman across the room. She looked out of place, like she belonged on the cover of a business magazine, not in this rundown cafe on 14th Street. Her heels were soaked, her hair was pulled into a high twist, and her red lipstick was. Violet stirred against his shoulder. "Daddy, I want a muffin." Callum kissed her forehead. "We'll get you one, V." He stepped up to the counter, ordered a small coffee for himself, a muffin for Violet, and then paused. He glanced back at the woman, still hunched over her untouched espresso with her hands clenched into fists. "Add another coffee," he told the barista. "Black, and can you give her whatever pastry she wants, put it on mine." The barista blinked. "You sure?" Callum nodded, pulling out a crumpled $10 bill. "Yes." He walked over slowly, Violet now munching on her muffin in one arm. He set the cup and bag down gently in front of the woman. She looked up, startled. "I didn't order this." "I know," Callum said, adjusting Violet again. "You just looked like you needed it." She blinked at him, then at the cup. "I'm not in the mood to be hit on." He chuckled. "I'm not hitting on you, promise. Just a guy with a 4-year-old who knows what a bad day looks like." Silence stretched between them for a beat. Then she sighed. "It's been a hell of a day." "Want to talk about it?" he asked, genuinely. She hesitated, but then her shoulders dropped like the weight of the world was finally too much to carry. "I fired someone today. Someone trusted. And then the board questioned my leadership because I didn't see it coming. I'm the CEO of Maven Tech, and right now I feel like a fraud." Callum raised an eyebrow. "Maven Tech, that's impressive." "Not today, it's not," she muttered. "I'm Callum," he said, easing into the seat across from her. "And this is Violet." Violet waved, cheeks puffed with muffin. "Hi." The woman cracked a small smile. "Hi, Violet, I'm Lorelei Monroe." Lorelei, even her name sounded expensive. They sat there for a few minutes, just sipping coffee and listening to the rain. Callum didn't push. He just listened. When Lorelei did speak, it came in waves: frustration, exhaustion, shame. She talked about how she built Maven Tech from the ground up, how she gave years of her life to it, how she had no idea who to trust anymore. And Callum didn't try to fix it. He just nodded and said, "That sucks," when it did. Sometimes that's all people need. When Violet finished her muffin and started dozing again, Lorelei reached out and touched the little girl's hand. "She's beautiful," she said quietly. "You're doing this alone." He nodded once. "Yeah, her mom left when Violet was 2, said she wasn't built for the mom thing, been me and V ever since." Lorelei's brows lifted. "That must be hard." "Some days, but most days," he looked down at Violet, "it's worth it." Lorelei studied him like she hadn't really seen him until now. His jacket was old, his boots scuffed, and his hands calloused. He looked like someone who worked with his hands. Someone who didn't have much, but gave what he did have freely. "Why'd you buy me that coffee?" she asked, voice softer now. Callum shrugged. "Because nobody ever bought one for me when I was having a bad day. Figured maybe someone should." She blinked. "You don't even know me." "Didn't need to." For a long second, she didn't say anything. Then she picked up the coffee and took a sip. It was quiet after that. Comfortable. He didn't expect anything when she stood up, just nodded and gave her a polite smile. But then she asked, "Are you free this weekend?" Callum's brows pulled together. "Why?" "There's a charity gala Friday night. I need to go, and frankly, I'd rather not go alone. It's black tie, she added, her eyes scanning his flannel shirt and worn jeans. He laughed. You're asking me to be your date to a billionaire gala. I'm asking the man who bought me a coffee when I needed it most to help me survive a room full of sharks. She pulled out a sleek ivory card from her purse and slid it across the table. That's the address. I'll have a car pick you up, if you're interested. Callum stared at the card, then back at her. You sure you want me there? She leaned in, her tone teasing and intense all at once. You helped me when I wasn't wearing a power suit. That's rare. And with that, Lorelei Monroe walked out into the rain, leaving him sitting there with a sleeping daughter, a business card, and the strangest feeling in his chest. I hope. Callum whispered to Violet, guess we're going to a gala, kiddo. The black town car pulled up outside Callum's apartment building in Brooklyn, just as the last of the evening sunlight brushed gold against the cracked brick facade. He adjusted the cuffs of the suit jacket borrowed from his friend Marcus, who bartended weddings on weekends and had one decent tux to his name, and glanced down at Violet. She looked up at him from inside her puffy purple jacket, chewing thoughtfully on the strap of her backpack. You sure you'll be okay with Miss Delia? He asked, crouching down beside her. Violet nodded. She lets me eat popcorn on the couch. Callum kissed her forehead. That's a dangerous level of freedom, kid. He watched as Delia, his neighbor from 2 floors down, ushered Violet inside her apartment with promises of cartoons and orange slices. Only when the door shut behind them did Callum turn back to face the car, his stomach tightening. The driver stepped out and opened the door. Mr. Trent. Yeah, he said, running a hand over his jaw. That's me. Inside, the leather seat smelled like cedar and something floral he couldn't name. The car moved smoothly through the city until skyscrapers turned silver under the rising moon. As the lights of Midtown loomed closer, Callum pressed his palms against his knees, trying to ignore the pressure building in his chest. He didn't belong there, not in a world of crystal chandeliers and past hors d'oeuvres. He was a mechanic, not a man who wore cufflinks or drank wine he couldn't pronounce. The car pulled into a circular drive in front of a limestone building that looked more like a castle than a hotel. Guests in floor-length gowns and tailored tuxedos stepped out of sleek cars, laughing as they disappeared inside. Callum stepped out, adjusting his borrowed bow tie. His boots polished until they touched the marble steps, and he took a breath before walking in. The ballroom hit him like a wave. Gold accents shimmered along the vaulted ceiling. A string quartet played near the far wall. Servers moved like choreography, trays balanced effortlessly in their hands. The scent of jasmine, champagne, and something roasted hung in the air. And then he saw her. Lorelei stood near the center of the room, speaking to an older couple. Her gown wasn't flashy, but it whispered elegance in every inch dark navy, sleek, with a slit high enough to suggest confidence without begging for attention. Her hair was swept over one shoulder in soft waves, and diamond studs blinked from her ears. She turned mid-laugh, and their eyes met. Callum didn't wave. He just stood there, unsure if he should approach or wait. But Lorelei excused herself and crossed the room toward him, her heels clicking softly over the marble. You clean up better than I expected, she said, her voice low and amused. I borrowed the jacket, he replied. I assumed, she said, not unkindly, but you wear it well. He exhaled a small laugh. I'm guessing I'm the only guy here who arrived in a car he didn't own. Lorelei tilted her head. Does it bother you, all this? He looked around. Not really, just not my usual Tuesday night. Good, she said, because I didn't ask you here to blend in. He raised a brow. Then why did you? Lorelei didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached for 2 glasses of champagne from a passing tray, handing him one. There's a man here tonight, Gregory Sloane. He's a venture capitalist and one of the board members who's been skeptical since the incident. Her tone was tight, careful. He's old money, believes people only have value if they come from it. Callum took a sip, and me showing up in borrowed clothes is supposed to help how? Because you're real, she said simply, and I need someone around tonight who doesn't pretend. Callum studied her. You don't strike me as the kind of woman who needs anyone. Normally, I don't, she said, eyes flickering beyond him. But lately, I've been questioning the people I let get too close. He followed her gaze to a man laughing near the bar-tailored suit, slicked back hair, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Let me guess, Callum said, that's Sloane. Unfortunately. And what exactly do you want me to do? Just be yourself, she said. Talk to me, stay near me, keep me grounded. You want me to be your anchor, he said. She looked up at him. Yes. He nodded slowly. All right then. They spent the next hour moving through the crowd. She introduced him only as Callum, no mention of what he did or didn't do. He watched her slip between conversations with practiced ease, but every so often, she'd glance at him like she needed to know he was still there. When they finally stepped onto the terrace for some air, the chill of early spring wrapped around them. Callum leaned against the railing. So, what happened to the guy you fired, the one who betrayed you? Lorelei's jaw tightened. He sold internal data to a competitor, trusted him for 5 years. He didn't say anything, but she continued anyway. I built Maven Tech with people I thought cared about doing something meaningful. But lately, I've been wondering if I just created a company full of people who cared about stock options more than people. And the board blamed you, he said. She nodded. They didn't say it outright, but could see it. And Sloane. He offered to bring in a COO, his nephew, which is code for we don't trust the woman running the company alone anymore. Callum let out a low whistle. That's brutal. I've been in rooms like this since I was 23, she said, stepping closer. And tonight, the only person trust here is the one who bought me a coffee in a paper cup. Callum turned to face her fully. You don't know me, Lorelei. I know enough, she said. You showed up, you didn't try to impress anyone, and you're not afraid of being out of place. He searched her face. You always this honest when you're in a gown. She laughed softly. No, I think I've just been lonely for a while and didn't realize it. The admission hung between them like mist. Callum stepped closer. You're not the only one. Lorelei looked up at him, her expression unreadable. I shouldn't want this, not now. Then don't, he said quietly, but if you do, I'm not going anywhere. She didn't answer, but she didn't move away either. Inside, the music swelled. Outside, everything else faded. And for the first time in a long time, Lorelei Monroe felt like she wasn't standing on her own. Lorelei hadn't meant to kiss him. It happened in the back of the town car, sometime after midnight, when the city outside blurred into a wash of streetlights and shadows. She'd leaned in to thank him for being there, for grounding her, when the night had tried to pull her under, and instead her lips had found his. It wasn't tentative. It wasn't polite. It was heat and honesty and the kind of hunger she hadn't let herself feel in years. But the kiss ended quickly, as if both of them realized at once that the line they crossed wasn't one that could be ignored later. Now, 3 days later, Lorelei sat in her glass-walled office, staring at the skyline but seeing none of it. Her assistant's voice buzzed through the intercom, reminding her about a meeting with the legal team, but she barely registered it. Because she hadn't heard from Callum since that night. She hadn't expected silence. Not from him. He wasn't the kind of man who played games. That much had been evident from the start. He was honest, steady. So the absence felt like a missing puzzle piece, one she hadn't realized she needed until it was gone. A sharp knock pulled her from her thoughts. Come in. It was Rory, her head of public relations, balancing a tablet and wearing the kind of expression that never meant good news. There's something you need to see, Rory said, handing her the device. Lorelei took it, her eyes scanning the open article. CEO Lorelei Monroe's mystery date. Who's the blue-collar man on her arm? Below the headline was a photo, blurry, clearly zoomed in but unmistakable. Her and Callum on the gala terrace, his hand resting lightly on her waist, her leaning in, smiling. She felt the back of her neck heat. Where did this come from? She asked, her voice taut. Someone from the event must have leaked it. It's spreading fast. Finance blogs, gossip sites, even a few industry forums. Lorelei swallowed hard. What's the narrative? That you're dating outside your circle, that he's a mechanic, that it's a calculated image move or a breakdown, depends on the angle. I don't care what they say about me, she said, setting the tablet down. But drag him into this and they cross a line. Rory hesitated. Do you want me to issue a statement? No, she said, standing. I'll handle it. She didn't call Callum, she went to him. The subway ride to Brooklyn felt longer than it was. She wore jeans and a sweater, no heels, no makeup, no armor. When she reached the auto shop where he worked, the air smelled like grease and rubber and heat. A bell jingled as she pushed open the door to the office. Callum was behind the counter, sleeves rolled up, phone pressed between his shoulder and cheek as he filled out a work order. He looked up. His eyes met hers, and something unreadable passed between them. Yes, I'll call you back, he said into the phone, hanging up without waiting for a reply. I'm guessing you saw the article, she said. I did. And... Callum tossed the pen down. Did you know it was going to happen? She blinked. Of course not. You think I'd let them paint you like some prop. I don't know what to think, Lorelei, he said, stepping around the counter. 1 minute we're talking on a balcony like we're the only ones in the world, and the next I'm getting texts from people haven't heard from in years asking if I'm your new project. Her jaw tightened. You're not a project. Then what am? I don't know yet, she said honestly, but I know I didn't bring you to that gala for show. I brought you because I needed someone real, and I kissed you because I wanted to, not because I was trying to make a headline. Callum leaned against the edge of the desk. Do you know what it's like to be on the outside of your world? She crossed the room, stopping in front of him. I felt like an outsider in my own life for years. He studied her, silent. I didn't call, he said finally, because I didn't know what came next. I'm not part of your world, Lorelei. I can't fly to Geneva for board meetings or sip $1,000 wine with investors. I fix engines. I pack lunchboxes. I go to bed with grease under my nails. I don't need you to be anything else. But you're used to a certain kind of life, he said, and I can't give you any of that. She stepped closer. You gave me something no one else has in a long time, honesty, a moment where it didn't have to be perfect. Do you know how rare that is for me? He didn't reply. I'm not asking you to change. I'm asking you to show up, again. He looked away, jaw tight. It's not just about me. Violet, she's everything. I don't let people into her world unless I'm sure. I don't want to meet her unless you're ready, she said. But don't shut me out because you're scared this won't work. I'm scared too, but we already crossed the line. He exhaled slowly. You're not what I expected. Neither are you. For a moment, the noise of the shop faded. Outside, the hum of traffic went on. Inside, it felt like the air had shifted. Callum reached for his keys. You got time. She nodded. Let's go for a drive. She glanced at her watch. I have a board meeting in 2 hours. Then let's make it count. They climbed into his truck, old but clean, the leather cracked and warm from the sun. As he pulled out into traffic, Lorelei rolled down the window and let the wind tangle her hair. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. The silence between them wasn't heavy, it was full of possibility. He drove toward the edge of the city, past neighborhoods where no one wore suits and rents didn't start at 5 figures. They parked near a small overlook that curved above the East River. The water below shimmered like scattered coins. Callum kept his hands on the wheel. This is the spot where I bring Violet when the world feels too big. Lorelei turned toward him. It's beautiful. I haven't brought anyone else here. Why now? He looked at her, eyes steady. Because you keep showing up. The sound of the river below filled the quiet. She reached over and took his hand. I'm not leaving. And this time, he didn't let go. The elevator doors opened to a quiet hum on the top floor of Maventech's new downtown headquarters, a sleek, glass-wrapped fortress suspended above the pulse of the city. Callum stepped out, adjusting the collar of his charcoal sport coat that Lorelei had insisted he keep after a stylist she'd, accidentally, scheduled fitted it to his frame earlier that week. It was the first time in his life he'd worn anything tailored, and though he still wasn't used to the feel of the smooth fabric, he hadn't. He held Violet's hand tightly as she skipped beside him. Her hair pulled up into 2 lopsided buns and a pink unicorn backpack bouncing with every step. Do I have to sit still the whole time? She asked, her voice echoing in the corridor. You just have to be your charming self for a little while, Callum replied. Lorelei wants to meet you properly. Violet scrunched her nose. Is she the pretty lady from the article? Callum paused. Yeah. Is she your girlfriend now? He chuckled under his breath. We haven't figured that part out yet. The reception area opened into a private lounge, where Lorelei stood waiting in a soft ivory blouse and dark trousers, her heels kicked off beside the wall like she'd been pacing. When she saw them, her expression shifted, something flickering behind her eyes that Callum hadn't seen before. Not relief, not anticipation, something quieter. Hope, maybe. Violet tugged her hand free and walked right up to her. Hi, are you the boss of the building? Lorelei knelt down to Violet's level. Some people say yam. Do you have secret codes and laser doors? Not yet, Lorelei said, her lips curling. But I do have a drawer with gummy bears. Violet beamed. You're my favorite adult now. Callum leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, watching them with a quiet astonishment that hadn't faded, even after spending more time with Lorelei over the last week than he had with any woman in the last 4 years. Come on, Lorelei said, standing and gesturing toward the corner office. Let's talk. Violet settled on the plush carpet with a coloring book from her backpack, while Callum and Lorelei moved to the seating area by the windows. I didn't expect a meeting in your office today, he said. I didn't want to ask unless I was sure you'd come, she replied, but I needed to see you both here together. He studied her carefully. What's going on? Lorelei reached for a folder on the side table and handed it to him. Inside was a proposal, simple language, clear numbers, and a title across the top that made his brow lift. Trent and Monroe Community Garage Initiative. Callum flipped through the pages. What is this? There's a property in Red Hook. It used to be a city-run mechanic training center before it shut down 5 years ago. I've been looking for ways Maventech can invest in the community without it being another tech incubator or startup accelerator. This is different. He looked up. You want to reopen a garage? I want to reopen one with you, she said. You'd lead the program, train people, hire apprentices, you'd run it your way. I'll handle the funding and infrastructure. You want to put my name on it. I want to build something real with you, something that matters. Callum set the folder down slowly. This isn't a favor. No, Lorelei said. This is the first thing in months that's felt honest. You told me once that nobody ever bought you a coffee when you needed one. You gave me that moment when I needed it most. I want to do the same for you, but bigger." He exhaled, pressing his hands together. "This is a lot." "I know. And we only started seeing each other, 2 weeks ago?" "I'm not asking for a ring, Callum," she said, her voice soft. "I'm asking for a chance. To build something that's ours, not just mine. You said, keep showing up. This is me showing up again." He glanced down at Violet, who was humming quietly as she colored in a lopsided dragon with glitter crayons. "I can't uproot her life without thinking it through." "You won't have to," Lorelei said. "We'll build this around what works for both of you. I'm not asking you to change everything. I'm offering something new." Violet looked up. "Can I help paint the garage when it opens?" Lorelei smiled. "Only if you promise to pick the most outrageous color." "Magenta," Violet said confidently. "Done," Lorelei replied. Callum leaned back, still processing. "You move fast." "You don't get to be where I am without knowing when something is worth moving for." "And you think I'm worth that?" "I know you are." He was quiet for a long moment. "I've been trying to do everything right since Violet was born. Keep things steady. Safe. But I think maybe I forgot how to want something for myself." Lorelei reached across and took his hand. "Then want this." He studied her face, no makeup, no glossed-over charm, just the woman who had cried into her coffee in a corner booth and then climbed her way back up. "All right," he said finally, "let's do it." The next month passed in a blur of permits, contracts, and construction dust. Callum spent his days meeting with city officials and former instructors willing to return as mentors. Lorelei handled the business end quietly, letting him lead every decision. Each night, they met for dinner, sometimes with Violet, sometimes just the two of them. It wasn't perfect. It was better. One afternoon, as they walked through the nearly finished garage walls freshly painted, toolkits lined up like soldiers, Callum turned to her. "You do realize this is the first time I've ever had my name on a building?" Lorelei brushed her fingers over the engraved sign near the entrance. "Feels right." "Still doesn't explain why someone like you keeps choosing someone like me." She stopped walking. "Do you remember what you said to me the night of the gala?" "I say a lot of things." "You said you weren't going anywhere, and you haven't. That's what matters." He pulled her close, their foreheads touching. "I love you." She smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that first." Outside, Violet ran across the pavement with a paintbrush in hand, magenta streaks following her like a comet trail. Inside, Lorelei and Callum stood in the center of the life they had built piece by piece, moment by moment together. And for the first time, neither of them felt like they were surviving. They were home. The soft buzz of conversation drifted through the open doors of the newly completed garage as the ribbon-cutting ceremony wound down. Guests filtered out into the late afternoon light, their voices echoing with approval, congratulations, and genuine curiosity. The Trent and Monroe Community Garage had officially opened its doors, and it hadn't taken long for word to spread. Callum stood off to the side, watching Violet dart between folding chairs, her dark curls bouncing as she showed off the magenta handprints she and the other kids had stamped on the side mural. She wore the same determined expression Lorelei had when she negotiated contracts. Callum could see it now, clear as day. Lorelei approached him with 2 glasses of sparkling lemonade, her hair pulled into a low twist and a white linen dress catching the breeze. The sun gilded her skin in gold, and her eyes searched his as she handed him the drink. "I feel like I've been holding my breath for weeks," she said, "and now it's all real." "That's because you never stop moving," Callum replied. "You build, fix, push forward. It's who you are." "Do you think I'll ever learn to slow down?" He took a sip of the lemonade. Maybe, but I like you just as you are, especially when you let yourself be still. She tilted her head. I've never had someone say that to me. Then I'm glad I'm the first. They stood in silence for a moment, the kind that didn't need filling. Lorelei watched Violet with a quiet admiration that had deepened since they'd grown closer, not just as partners, but as something steadier. Callum had seen the shift in her, how she'd started asking about Violet's routines, how she instinctively reached for her hand when they crossed streets, how she'd begun to keep a small sketchpad in her purse filled with Violet's drawings. She told me yesterday that if I ever made you sad, she'd hide my tools, Lorelei said. Callum laughed. That sounds about right. Have you thought more about what we talked about last week? She asked, her voice careful. He nodded. Yes, have. And I'm ready. Lorelei blinked. You are. Callum turned toward her fully. You asked me if I'd ever consider moving, if Violet and I could see ourselves somewhere new, somewhere with you. I wasn't sure then, but I'm now. I want a life with you, Lorelei, not one that fits into your world or mine, but one we make together. She took a step closer, her voice just above a whisper. I want that too. I've already talked to Delia about the apartment, he continued. She's found someone to sublet it, and Marcus is going to keep an eye on the garage during the weekends, so can spend more time helping you expand this place. You're really doing this. I'm doing it because I love you, and because Violet deserves to wake up in a house where love isn't something you just talk about. It's something she sees every day. Lorelei's eyes glistened, but she didn't look away. I never thought I'd find someone who could see everything: my ambition, my fear, the parts I tried to hide and still want to stay. Then you never met the right person. She touched his chest above his heart. I have now. Callum leaned down and kissed her, slow and certain, as the wind tugged lightly at the corner of the banner behind them. When they parted, Violet ran up, her cheeks flushed and her hands stained with paint. Are you two gonna kiss forever, or can we go eat cake now? She demanded. Lorelei laughed. Cake, definitely cake. They walked hand in hand toward the long table where a few remaining slices of vanilla sheet cake waited. Callum lifted Violet onto his hip, and Lorelei balanced 3 paper plates with practiced ease. The 3 of them sat on the curb together, surrounded by the scent of fresh tires and the hum of a building that now belonged to all of them. Later that evening, after the last of the guests had left and the garage lights had dimmed, they stood in the upstairs apartment Lorelei had designed with them in mind. It was modest compared to her penthouse, but warm sunlight streamed through tall windows, and Violet's new room was already half covered in glow in the dark stars. Callum set a box down in the living room. This is the last of it. She walked over to him, barefoot now, her features softer in the evening light. I have something for you. He turned as she reached into a drawer and pulled out a small, square envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, legal, crisp, and stamped. It's a joint deed, she said, for the garage. I already filed it. Your name comes first. Callum stared at it, emotion coiling behind his ribs. Why would you? Because you built it long before I ever had the idea, she said. Because, don't want there to be any question, this is yours as much as it is mine. But you didn't have to. I wanted to, she said, because real love doesn't keep score, and because you gave me something no one else ever did, the freedom to be exactly who I am. He set the paper down carefully, then pulled her against him. This is it, isn't it? She nodded into his chest. Everything we didn't know we needed. He brushed her hair back and kissed her temple. Then let's make it last. They danced slowly in the living room, no music, just the rhythm of quiet hearts and steady hands. Violet peeked out from her doorway, watched them for a moment, then tiptoed over and wrapped her arms around both of their legs. Group hug, she announced. They laughed, sinking to the floor in a tangle of limbs and laughter and promises. And when the city outside dimmed and the world quieted, Callum, Lorelei, and Violet sat together on the couch beneath the soft glow of a single lamp, wrapped in a blanket of something stronger than certainty. They were a family. And they were home.